Well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another exciting broadcast with us here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. I know we've got a lot of familiar classes in the crowd today, but we've also got a whole bunch of newbies. And so if you are new to us, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Now, everything we do goes to our YouTube channel, so if you want to watch this program in 3 weeks or 3 years, or catch one of like 3,000 other programs you've done, you can head right there and do just that. I also want to note today we are going to have a Kahoot quiz. So if you want to play along with a little 4-question quiz between our talk and our Q&A, you can do so with this game pin. This is in about 25 minutes, so no hurry. And I will bring this up and share it in all our chats for everyone, but an extra way to keep it fun and interactive today. Now, I'm particularly excited today for a couple of reasons. Number one, we are joining back on our epic peak discovery series in conjunction with the amazing folks at the mountain parks. For those who've been lucky enough to go to Canada's mountain parks in Alberta and British Columbia, they are some of the most spectacular places, not just in Canada, but in the entire world. 10-part series over the course of the year. You can check out all those programs at the link below. But I'm even more excited for today because today is the most popular program we've done all year. We've done like 70 programs since September 12th. It's been insane. This beats everything. This got double the audience of astronauts 2 days ago. We've got more than any other live program we've done all year long. There's 1,580 kids from 13 provinces and states joining today, which is insane. So a big thank you to all of you for being such a keen audience on butterflies and the butterfly effect. I'm going to take you to Brett Hutchinson in a minute. He's going to blow your mind talking about some of the incredible butterflies they have in the mountain parks and the importance of helping conserve endangered species. One species in threat or made extinct can have a really big impact on the ecosystem, which is what the butterfly effect as a concept is all about. So we're going to learn from him a little bit about the amazing work that they're doing in parks to preserve these creatures and more. I'm so excited to turn it over to him. I'm going to stop talking. And so, Brett, thank you so much for joining us today, man. And welcome to Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So nice to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jesse. 1,500 students. That is wild. This is awesome.
It is awesome.
Might as well let's get on our way with it. So hello, bonjour, ok. My name is Brett Hutchinson, and I'm an interpreter with Parks Canada. And now that's a bit of a weird title. Most people think as an interpreter that I get to interpret languages, but with my job, I get to interpret nature. And today we are going to be talking about species at risk and the importance of everything in an ecosystem, from the largest of the mammals to the smallest of the insects, and everything in between. Now, before we get started with today's presentation, I would like to acknowledge that I am presenting today in the territories of the Siksika-Sitapi, the Kainai, the Piikani, the Siksika, and Amskapi-Piikani. Waterton Lakes National Park falls within Treaty 7 territory, which includes the Tsuut'ina Nation, the Stoney Nakoda, the Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney. The Ktunaxa Nation also have a connection to Waterton, and members of the Métis Nation Region 3 currently reside in Waterton Lakes area. The lands and waters of Waterton Lakes have been used for millennia by Indigenous people for sustenance, ceremony, trade, and travel. We would like to thank them today for their continuous stewardship and for sharing the land with us. All right. Now, what is a species at risk? Name is honestly pretty self-explanatory. It's a species that's at risk of something. But what is that something? Essentially, it's a species that faces the risk of extinction from a variety of threats, such as habitat loss or even climate change. Here in Canada, we have a pretty cool piece of legislation called the Species at Risk Act, or SARA for short, that protects all species at risk that call Canada their home. If an animal is listed under SARA, there becomes a legal obligation for Canadians to protect that particular species. Now, I want to ask a question to all 1,500 of you. Do any of you know any species at risk? Now, unfortunately, there are quite a few organisms in Canada listed under the Species at Risk Act, but I would love to hear some of your guys' guesses.
Ooh, okay. I'll highlight that when we have interactive bits like this, if you're on YouTube, you can share in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. We've got so many groups on YouTube today. StreamYard, you guys can share on camera or in the chat as well. We've got so many kids, which is exciting. A lot of your mics are off, so you can flick on your mics. While we're waiting for your answers, a big shout out to our multiple Miss Kirk's class, the entirety of Fort Macleod, as always, including Mr. Edwards and Miss Kirk's there, Miss White's class. Our private chat's getting a few of them. Rhino, hippo, butterfly, great options, Miss Kaufman's class. Any other thoughts? We'll give it another second. Endangered species, at-risk species. Ooh, those are, Miss Coffin, you came in with a snow leopard, rhino, silverback gorilla. Very good classes. This is great.
Yeah, those are all some great answers. I wish I knew every animal that was listed under the Species at Risk Act, but this thing is over 150 pages long, and I just don't have the time to memorize all that. Now, we could read this entire document together today, but that would be so the important stuff. Under SARA, there are 5 different levels of species at risk. We got extinct, we got extirpated, we got endangered, then there's threatened, and underneath that is species of special concern, 5. So each of these levels are different and require different amounts of attention and protection. It would be pretty crazy to put a bunch of resources into bringing an animal back from extinction when we could put that same time and energy into saving an animal that is endangered from going extinct. Now, as much as I would love to one day go to a theme park with real live dinosaurs, it's just not super realistic though. But we can realistically keep the organisms we have here on Earth. Those 5 levels all seem pretty similar, so let's go through each one and see what they all mean, starting with extinct. Now, this is probably the easiest one to nail down. Species that are extinct are species that no longer exist anywhere on the planet. Dinosaurs are a great example, or more recently, the dodo bird. We are no longer capable of helping these animals, but it is extremely valuable to recognize them. It's a sad thing to lose a species completely, but every extinct species offers a unique learning opportunity. They went extinct for some reason, and knowing what caused the extinction can help us protect future species from the same fate. An extinction event like the asteroid that destroyed the dinosaurs is pretty hard to stop without the help of some super space lasers or a team of miners led by Bruce Willis drilling explosives into the asteroid. But the dodo bird tells a much different story. They were overharvested, had their habitat destroyed by humans, and were outcompeted by introduced species. All of these factors led to their extinction. And everything that led to the dodo bird's extinction was preventable and caused almost entirely by human negligence. Moving forward, we need to learn from their story and not make the same mistakes. Now, moving on, we have extirpated. Now, this is a really weird word. An extirpated species is a species that's locally extinct, meaning it can no longer be found in places where it was once found, but is found elsewhere. One example is the Northwest Atlantic population of the Atlantic walrus, who are extirpated from Canada. Don't appear here anymore, but they still occur in places like Greenland, Norway, and Russia. We can look at extirpated species from many different scales, such as locally, say a species that no longer exists here in Waterton, for example. Regionally, maybe a species that no longer occurs in Alberta, or even on a national scale, where they don't occur in Canada anymore. The difference between an extirpated and an extinct species is that they can still be found on the planet. It is possible to bring back an extirpated species if we work hard to rebuild the habitat that they were extirpated from and find out the reasons why they became extirpated in the first place. There is a possibility to repopulate these species from populations found elsewhere. Now, before we get to that point, though, we do have to do a ton of research to make sure that they do not become extirpated again. All right, now we're moving on to endangered species. And endangered species is probably the one that we hear the most about. Endangered species are any species that face imminent threat of extirpation or extinction, meaning if we don't help them now, they will become extinct soon. Now, 2 species that are endangered in Canada and are located and protected here in Waterton are the little brown bat and the whitebark pine. These 2 species are threatened primarily by disease. The little brown bat populations are declining due to a disease called white nose syndrome, a disease that causes an annoying little rash on these guys. And whitebark pine are threatened by a disease called blister rust. Focusing time and effort and resources on endangered species can help save them from extirpation or extinction. Parks Canada is working real hard to protect the habitat for both of these species, and even going as far as planting thousands of whitebark pine seedlings all across the Rocky Mountains. If you want to learn more about either of these species and what Parks Canada is doing to protect them, you can check out some previous programs we've put on in the Peak Discovery series on YouTube. Moving down the scale, we got threatened species. Now, threatened species are species at risk of becoming endangered if nothing is done to protect their habitat and their populations. It sounds very similar to endangered, I know, and the distinction between the two is kind of hard to picture. They still need protection, but their populations are usually larger than endangered species. And if we don't start helping them, they will more than likely become endangered. Two species in the mountain national parks that are threatened are the olive-sided flycatcher, say that 10 times fast, and the West Slope cutthroat trout. Like endangered species, with proper and timely action, threatened species can be protected. Both the olive-sided flycatcher and the cutthroat trout have experienced significant habitat loss, which is the reason for them being on the threatened list. Again, Parks Canada is working hard to protect these species' habitat by restricting access to areas that they call home. All right, we're almost on the list. Last on the list, number 5, species of special concern. These are species that are extremely sensitive to human activities or natural events. For instance, a wildfire or the development of human infrastructure like a road or a new building. They're not yet endangered or threatened. Animals like the grizzly bear, who is extremely sensitive to the presence of humans and human disturbances, are a species of special concern. So if you're ever in a national park or even outside or anywhere really, if you see any animals, make sure to give them their space, as it is their home out there and we don't want to harm them in any way possible. All right, so we touched briefly on a few animals who are at risk, and you may have noticed a common theme between all these animals. Now, did any of the classrooms catch a common theme between all of these species and why they are at risk?
Anyone want to chime in our chat? Give you guys a second. We've covered a lot of ground together, Brett. This has been very exciting.
Very much.
Oh, Miss Cobben's at the ready. Miss Cobben, I can come to you and just shout it out if you'd like. Anything that links them as a theme?
Humans!
I was so excited I missed what it was.
We said humans.
Human impact, Brett. I think that might be a pretty good option here. Let's see.
Yeah, I think that is the option that I had was a disturbance, but usually those disturbances are caused by humans. That's a great answer, you guys. So all of these species that we've talked about have experienced a significant disturbance that their populations were not able to handle without some help. Now, any organism, whether it's a plant, a bug, a bird, or even an apex predator, can be at risk, and losing any single species can be devastating. Every species has its own unique role and purpose in its ecosystem, just like how we have unique roles in our own lives. That's a picture of climate change right there, stuff caused by humans. Now we're going to move from nature into the school to kind of look at an ecosystem that you guys have around you right now. Everyone in a school has a very specific and very important role that needs to be filled in order to keep the school running. Number one is all you guys, all the students. I would consider you all the keystone species of a school. Without students, there wouldn't be a need for school. And your guys' role in a school, well, that's learning, a very, very important job. And there would be no schools without each and every one of you. And your teachers help facilitate your learning and make sure that each one of you are taken care of. Now, I want you all in your own classrooms right now to give a big hip hip hooray for all the amazing teachers that brought you to this amazing program today. I'll give you 1 second to cheer for them.
Woohoo!
Perfect. Thank you, Jesse. And moving on, your principal and other administration staff, they do all the background work to make sure your classrooms have everything they need to succeed. They're like wizards behind the curtain being leaders in their school. And also custodians. They keep the school safe and in working order to ensure that everybody has a space to succeed. There's so many more as well, like teachers' assistants, school bus drivers, cafeteria workers. And I'm sure I'm missing some extremely important ones. But what I'm trying to get at is it takes a lot to make a school run. A school cannot operate without any of these individuals. And if one of these individuals were to suddenly disappear, the school wouldn't operate. If you remove students, there would be no point to school. If you remove teachers, you wouldn't learn. If you removed custodians, the school would become an incredibly uncomfortable place. Now, everyone has their role, and each one of these roles is equally as important. The same goes for an ecosystem. Every plant, bug, bird, animal, they all play incredibly important roles to keeping an ecosystem running. Now let's move from the classroom to beautiful Waterton Lakes National Park, specifically a magical and biodiverse place called the Blakiston Fan. It's a beautifully diverse grassland at the foot of the mountains, home to incredible wildflowers. It houses herds of elk, packs of coyotes, and in the summer it is butterfly galore. Now, I love butterflies. They are so small and delicate, and they come in so many different colors. One of those butterflies in Waterton, it is a species at risk. It's specifically an endangered species. Now, this species isn't the flashiest butterfly, nor is it the biggest, but this little guy plays an important role in this ecosystem. Now, drum roll, the butterfly I am talking about is the half-moon hair streak. And no, it's not a moth, it's a butterfly, believe it or not. This little guy has a wingspan around 2 to 3 centimeters in length, so roughly the size of my thumbnail. Their lifespan is just as short as their wings as well. Once they emerge out of their pupa as butterflies, they live for around 6 days. In those 6 days, they certainly make their mark on the ecosystem and play a very important role. Now, the half-moon hair streak is found only in 2 places in Canada. There's a population that can be found, if you kind of look at this arrow here, it can be found in the southern interior of BC and into Montana, and it spreads throughout some of western United States, which is 400 kilometers away from our extremely isolated population that lives here in Waterton, where that red circle is. Having a population this isolated means that we won't see any butterflies from the BC population move in and add to our population, so we're really on our own out here. Now, in Waterton, the half-moon hair streak lives in an even smaller place, the Blakiston Fan. Right there, that place I showed you earlier with all those beautiful flowers. Now, the Blakiston Fan is a small floodplain highlighted here in red. So in a very small area, inside a very small area. Since this population is so isolated and in such a small space, it is extremely sensitive to any major changes to their habitat. For instance, a wildfire. In 2017, there was a major wildfire that came through Waterton and burnt the majority of the Blakiston Fan. Fast forward to the following year in 2018, researchers went out and they found only 6 half-moon hair streaks on the Blakiston Fan. 6. That is a tiny number. The fire nearly extirpated the half-moon hair streak from Waterton. Imagine if a flood were to come through in 2018 and we saw only 6, the year we saw only 6 butterflies. That very well could have been the end for the half-moon hair streak in Waterton. Luckily, in the years since, we have seen the population rise, but the risk of a large disturbance event is still there. So Parks Canada is working closely with the Calgary Zoo and the Wilder Institute to better understand the half-moon and help protect its habitat. Now, why is the half-moon hair streak important? What exactly would happen if we would have lost the half-moon hair streak? It only lives as 6 days, and it's only as big as my thumb. It can't be that important. But remember the school? Even if we lost one group in the school, the school wouldn't function. The same goes for the Blakiston fan. If it loses one of its species that calls it home, there will be a profound effect on everything else around it. Now, it's hard to gauge what exactly would happen if we lost this butterfly, but we can put out our best guess. Now, I'll ask the group, what is a butterfly's most important job in the ecosystem? Again, feel free to type your answers into the chat. Maybe shout it out. What is a butterfly's most important job?
Oh, we got comments coming in on YouTube already. Our live class. If you guys want to chime in the chat, let's see. If anyone in our class want to unmute their mic, 7-person school. Do you want to yell it out? Do we know? Oh yeah, your mic's off. your mic's on, but it doesn't want to work. Pollinating's coming through on YouTube, which is a great answer. Pollinating from everyone. Brett, I think they're on board with pollination. I think they might be.
I think you're on. You guys nailed it exactly. Butterflies are pollinators, meaning that they aid and assist in the reproduction process of plants by carrying pollen from one plant to another. And it turns out that half-moon hairstreak is a key pollinator for certain plants on the Blakiston fan, with solidago or goldenrod. Now, I'm going to move forward to look at a food web that I've created, and we're going to take a deep dive into the ecosystem and find everything that is connected to the half-moon hairstreak. Now, the Blakiston fan is an incredibly biodiverse place with countless plants, mammals, birds, insects. I've only displayed a handful of them, so let's go through the pig animals that I have on the screen here. First, we have the coyote, then we have the black bear, we have elk, deer, and ground squirrels. We have solidago right there, and lupin right there, and of course, the half-moon hairstreak. Now, each one of these species has a unique and important role, something called a niche, that it plays in this ecosystem. Plants create energy that can be used by everyone. Your grazers will help keep plant populations at bay, as well as providing food for your predators. Your predators keep the population of grazers in check so they don't eat all the plants. And last but not least, the butterflies, like the half-moon hairstreak, will help pollinate numerous plants throughout the Blakiston fan. But what would happen if we were to lose any one of these species from this community? Now, I want to play a little activity with you guys. I want you guys to pick one of these two predators at the top here, either the coyote or the black bear, and we can see what might happen to this community if we were to lose that animal.
Ooh, these are big decisions. Let's see. One of our classes, Miss Coffin's back, Miss LeBlanc. Anyone wants to chime in the chat? Whatever gets the most votes in the next 10 seconds, I'm going to give the pick. Oh, we got one for bear. One for bear. Does anyone else want bear? Bear going once, going twice. Any coyote picks? Let's see. Oh, what do we got? It's 1 for 1. Okay. Oh, YouTube, what are we getting? Bear, 2 for bear. This is so fun for me. We should do this all the time. But Coyote wins. Coyote just crushed on YouTube. Oh,
Coyote came through? Okay.
Came through.
Let's see what might happen if we were to lose the coyote. Now, it's hard to imagine what the loss of a carnivore can do to an ecosystem, but let's really think about it for a second. If we were to lose coyotes, since they're top predators, we would start to see population of animals that coyotes preyed upon move in, since pressure has been taken off. Here, that means we would see more deer, we'd see more ground squirrels, and possibly more elk. With all these grazers moving in, I'd suspect that the foods that they like to eat would dwindle, plants such as solidago and lupin. With less and less solidago and lupin, the half-moon hairstreak would no longer have a food source or a place to lay her eggs, which would eventually lead to their disappearance. Now, predators can have a profound impact on their ecosystem, and the complete removal of one from a community would have drastic and quick repercussions. So we've seen what can happen if we lose a predator, but now what about one of these grazers, the elk, the deer, or the ground squirrel? Now I want you guys to do the same thing where I want you to pick either the elk, the deer, or the ground squirrel to see what might happen to this community if we were to lose it.
I've never seen a chat so fast with this one and the last. This has been amazing. So we've got elk and ground squirrel, our first two votes. These are all great options. Like no matter what, even if your animal isn't picked, I promise these are great options. Deer. Oh, we're getting a little. Ground squirrel's the only one with 2 from our live classes. And on YouTube, let's see, does ground squirrel take the day? Elk takes the day. You know what? Elk and ground squirrel are tied. I'm going to give it to ground squirrel because we're getting a bunch of those in our live classes really wanted it. So let's do it.
Sounds good. And it's a ground squirrel's small. Like, what could happen if we removed a ground squirrel from this ecosystem? Well, for starters, ground squirrels are a huge food source for coyotes. So without this key food source, we could see a dramatic decrease in coyotes. Now, with coyotes gone, deer might feel a bit more comfortable to move into this area as there's less of a chance of them getting predated upon. So let's move some deer into the area. And deer, they gotta eat too. And that lupin, it looks pretty tasty. But with so many deer, they may overgraze the lupin. As larvae, the half-moon hairstreak, they only eat lupin. So if lupin were to disappear, so would the half-moon hairstreak. Now that's pretty remarkable as what might happen if we were to lose something as simple as a ground squirrel. Now, we can see that these communities are extremely complicated, and the loss of any species can be devastating to our little butterfly friend. And all these scenarios that we have gone through are just speculation. We don't really know what would happen. These are just some educated guesses. And now, after going through all those, we can start to make some educated guesses as what would happen if we were to lose the half-moon hairstreak. What we know for certain is when the half-moon hairstreak lays its eggs on Solidago, it pollinates it. So without this key pollinator, we could see populations of Solidago disappear. Now with Solidago gone, your grazers are going to have less food. So we can say that deer might not have enough food and will go elsewhere to eat. Now with the deer moving elsewhere, the coyotes will most likely follow them because, again, that's one of their biggest food sources. So by losing one single butterfly in this scenario, the Blackiston fan has also lost Solidago, deer, and coyotes. Now, realistically, this community is much more complicated than this, and there are many other species at play than the ones that we have just on the screen here. But the main point still stands. The loss of any species will have a cascading effect on the ecosystem it calls home. Now, this little drab butterfly helps hold up the delicate balance of its ecosystem. Now, that's a lot of weight for a 3-centimeter butterfly that only lives for 6 days. This small little butterfly has connections with every species that calls the Blackiston fan its home, whether it's direct or indirect. And if we were to lose it, that change would surely be felt throughout this community. Now, we went through a lot today in a very short amount of time, and talking about endangered species and species at risk can be kind of sad. But that's why I love the half-moon hairstreak so much. It's still endangered and it still needs a lot of protection. But we've seen this population grow in the years since the fire from 6 to well over 200. That's still a very small population, but it's getting a lot better. The half-moon hairstreak is really only one species at risk here in Waterton. So although it's an endangered species that I can help, lots of you are all from far away and have your own locally endangered species. Now, I urge every one of you to find out what species in your area that might be endangered or at risk. And if you can, do your part in protecting them. And remember, it doesn't matter how small or unassuming a species is, because all species are important and deserve to be protected. And before I finish off today, I would like to give a special shout out and thanks to the Calgary Zoo and the Wilder Institute for helping protect the half-moon hairstreak here in Waterton Lakes National Park and for use of some of the photos that we've used today. But Jesse, I think that's all I got for you, and maybe we can head over to those Kahoot questions.
Oh, Brett, well, that was so spectacular. Thank you so much. And like the most engaged audience in chats I think we've ever had. So a huge thank you to all our amazing classes. As Brett mentioned, we are going to go to our Kahoot. So if you want to come out of screen share so you can see us, join along with us. For those who are new to Kahoot, the faster you answer, the more points you get. Now, you don't win anything, but you do win Brett and I's everlasting respect, which I think is pretty fun. So we're going to test some understanding, have a little bit of fun, and then we are going to go to our GEMS class first for a question. 7 persons. You guys are going to have to share in the chat. We're going to take questions from all our live classes and as many from YouTube as we possibly can together. So sign in with that game pin. We've already got 50 of you in our Kahoot, which is amazing. We're going to get started in just a few seconds. But a big shout out while you are pouring in to all our amazing classes. There's more than I can probably even see on our chat, which is awesome. But we've got classes from all over North America. It's a really exciting broadcast. So I'm going to get us underway with this. I'll move off our game pin off the screen. So come on in with it at the top there. And Brett, if you want to help us out with little hints with a few seconds to go every time, we'd appreciate that, I'm sure.
You got it, Jesse.
Dive in, man. All right. Question number 1. Ooh, 2, 1, and go. If you're on YouTube, especially get it in quick because you're a little bit delayed. What are the 5 levels of species at risk? We talked about this at the beginning. Is it dead, alive, concerning, really concerning, and thriving? Is it extinct, extirpated, endangered, threatened, special concern? Or is it extinct, endangered, special concern, dead, or alive? Dun, 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 dun. Get those answers in quick, especially on YouTube. Oh, a lot of them pour it in. Pour them in. Here we go. It is B is our answer. Most of you got this right. Very good. So, I mean, animals certainly can be dead or alive. They can be thriving, but the official designation are the ones on B. All right. Amazon giraffe, about as far an animal as you can possibly get from our Half Moon Hair Streak, is in first place so far. Why did the Half Moon Hair Streak's population get so low in 2018? Might be included in the picture. A little hint. Overharvesting, birds ate them all, fire, or flood. What do we think? Get the answers in as quick as possible. If you're not on Kahoot 2 and you just want to play along, that's totally fine. Obviously. 77 answers. There's so many of you. This is crazy. Most of you got the picture. I tried to make it a little easy for you. Nicely done, everyone. Brett, I think we're going to take one more question specifically on the Half Moon, and then we're going to ask for some opinions from our classes.
Ooh.
All right. This was mentioned a few times in the broadcast. How long does an adult Half Moon Hair Streak live? 6 days, 6 hours, 6 weeks, or 6 years? Drum roll, please. Get those answers in. Oh, ooh, confusion on this one. 9 more seconds. Get them in. Get them in. So exciting.
It's very short.
Very short. Maybe not super, super short, but almost that short. 94 of you now. It is 6 days. You know what? You said it so much that we definitely convinced them. I am going to skip ahead of the leaderboard for this and go straight to question 4, because these next 2 questions don't have any correct answers. We just want your thoughts. Did you learn something today that you didn't know before? You learned a lot? Did you learn a little? Or you didn't learn anything and you knew everything about the Species at Risk Act and the Half Moon Hair Streak butterfly? Are you a Half Moon genius? Maybe. Let us know. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. We just want to know what you think. And then we're going to do the leaderboard at the very end together. We've got one more question like this in a minute, and then we're going to wrap up. Oh, nice. 12 of you are Half Moon Hair Streak experts, and the other 77 learned quite a bit, which is fantastic. So thank you for that, everyone. We're going to head to our final question, and then we're going to check out our leaderboard. And then, Gems, we're heading to you. Did you like today's program? We always like to highlight this with our Parks series. We're so lucky to have Parks Canada join us for these amazing broadcasts. So you loved it, you liked it, you're kind of neutral, or you're a sad face on a chalkboard. It could be any of those. There's no right answer, I promise. That does not affect the scores at the end. And then, yes, Gem Chicago, we're heading to you guys in a minute for a question. To kick us off, Madam Nancy, Miss Kaufman, Miss LeBlanc's class, lots of questions. Oh, nice. Well, overwhelmingly positive, Brett, and that's about as good as you can get. I'm excited. Way to go. And let's check our leaderboard. All right. If you are any of these kids, let us know who you are. We'd love to hear from you. Diligent Swan is 3rd. Dun, 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 dun. Knowing Falcon is 2nd. And first, for all the marbles and the everlasting respect, is Amazon Giraffe. Wire to wire victory. Nicely done. Bravo. Brett, let's head in with questions. YouTubers, please share questions. I'll take as many as I can. And Brett, a quick question for you. Are you willing to have a Padlet after this where classes can share additional questions? I know.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. Okay. And if I can't answer any today, then maybe I can throw the answers and do a bit more research for you guys and get the answers on there.
Amazing. I'll make up a Padlet. So classes, if you don't get your questions answered live today, because there are a lot of you, I'll make sure you have a virtual whiteboard you can share more after this program is done. But let's head to our GEMS crew, grade 4. If you guys want to unmute your mic and kick us off with a question, you are good to go. Hey, everyone. Welcome in. Hello. Come on. Hi. Do you have a question for Brett?
Yeah.
Or you're just so excited? Too excited for questions, maybe. Oh, do we have a question? Spirit class? See, I can come back. You can think about it, but I like your screen. That was very exciting. We're going to head to Miss Kaufman's class. I know they have a question. They were like really big in the Q&A earlier. So come on in and take us away, grade 2.
Hey, my kiddos had to go for recess, so this was one of the questions. Does the half moon hair streak butterfly follow the same life cycle as other butterflies, even though their lifespan is so short?
That's a great question. So half moon hair streak butterflies, they do follow a fairly similar life cycle to a lot of other butterflies, meaning that when the adult butterflies, they will lay their eggs on that solidago plant that I was talking about. And then at the end of the season, those eggs will actually stay there over the winter. And then once the temperatures warm up enough, then the larva will emerge out of those eggs and start eating the solidago and eating some of the lupin. And then they'll go into their pupae and then emerge as butterflies later on as well. So yeah, they go through that same life cycle. They don't migrate like the monarchs. Yes.
I like that question. Thank you, Miss Kaufman's class. Seven Person School, I'm going to bring you on camera. I know your audio isn't working, but we'll say a big hello to you, grade 4s. They wanted to know if there are any other endangered butterflies that you could talk about either in the park or just generally.
Oh man, I'm an expert on the half moon hair streak. I don't know too many other butterflies, to be brutally honest with you. I'm sure there are a lot of other endangered butterflies throughout the world, but locally here in Waterton, the half moon hair streak is the only endangered butterfly that we have.
See, you stumped the expert. I love that when that happens. It's one of the great joys of these broadcasts. Gem Chicago, I can come back to you for a question if you have one. You can unmute your mic. Madam Nancy will come to you if you unmute your mic. But Miss LeBlanc, you're right at the camera. So unmute grade 6s and take us away. Hey, guys.
Hi, we were wondering how many animals go extinct every year?
Ooh.
Again, I'm not too sure on that. I have somebody beside me who's quickly Googling that for me.
That's a tough question.
I'm not too sure.
Yep. One of the things that characterizes this era, and this is really interesting, is that the background extinction rate is really, really low. Very few things go extinct in any given year in normal times. One of the things that we're doing, and a lot of you picked up on this earlier, is that humans are having an impact on so many ecosystems that a lot more things are going extinct than should be going extinct. It's very hard to know when things go extinct because it's hard to track down those last few animals or plants. Do you have an answer for us? I think we're expecting.
I do have an answer now for you.
Please.
So I would like to answer your question with a little bit more info. So there's something called large extinction events that happen kind of throughout history. So the meteor that hit the Earth that took out the dinosaurs, that was a large extinction event. Some scientists think that we might be heading into another large extinction event because right now it is estimated that there are about 100 to 10,000 species, from small microscopic single-celled organisms up to very large organisms that go extinct every year.
Wow. So it's a lot. I mean, this is kind of an alarming thing, but it underscores the importance of doing work like the Wilder Institute, the Calgary Zoo, Parks Canada, and helping conserve the species that we know are at risk, especially if we've been the ones that put them at risk. So I love that question. Thanks, Ms. LeBlanc. YouTubers, you guys have amazing questions. I'm going to take a few rapid fire ones from you all. Ms. Van Belois classes wants to know, how do you count the butterflies without mixing them up? Great question.
That's a really good question. So the half moon hair streak butterfly, it's very unique when you get to look at it very closely. So when our researchers are out in the field, they do something called a transect. So they'll have a few researchers all kind of segmented in a few different lines, and they'll walk straight lines looking underneath every lupin and every solidago plant. Because we know the half moon hair streak will only be on those two plants, we can take a pretty good guess that the larvae that we see underneath the leaves are a half moon hair streak. When they're flying, though, they're very easy to point out. They're the very gray drab moths about the size of my thumb here. and they're very furry as well. So they are a very unique looking butterfly, especially here in Waterton.
Fantastic answer, man. Mr. Edwards class joining us again in Fort Macleod. They've been joining us for all sorts of broadcasts. It's so nice to have you guys in grade threes. They want to know why they live for only 6 days.
That's a great question. Lots of insects don't really live for very long. So if we look at really large animals, say something like a bear, their what we call reproductive rate is long. They only have so many children every year. Whereas a butterfly, because there's so little and they live for so short, they actually lay about 400 eggs per butterfly. So yeah, 6 days may seem very short, but if you have those 400 eggs, they all don't hatch at the exact same time. So they'll hatch throughout the summer as long as Solidago is still in bloom. So their hatching time and their life cycle is very much intrinsically linked to the blooming of Solidago.
Great question, guys. All right, Gem Chicago, you have a great question, but I want you to say it on camera. So I'll bring you back in, unmute your mic, and share with us. I'll take a couple more on YouTube, and I'm going to highlight the Padlet for everyone in a minute, too, where you can share all these additional questions. Hello, welcome in.
Hello.
So, share your question because it was so great in the chat, but I want our other classes to hear it.
Okay, thank you. Our first question is, can you clone butterflies?
Oh, wow. I'm not sure on that. I don't know a ton about cloning. I know that we can selectively breed certain butterflies. So say if we know that a butterfly is this certain kind of lineage is super strong, then we'll kind of put butterflies of that same lineage together to try and lay eggs of that very strong butterfly. So although we're not cloning these butterflies, sometimes selective breeding does happen so we can get stronger and stronger butterflies so that when we have them out on the fan that they do live for a bit longer. But we don't do any cloning here.
We've gotten this question a few times in a variety of conservation broadcasts, and I always like to highlight that it is super cool. You can, in theory, clone anything, but will that be a big impact to the ecosystem, to the species? No, we're not there with the technology yet. And frankly, the cost of doing something like cloning is way more money, way more difficult to pull off than much more pedestrian, normal conservation actions that have a real tangible impact. So I like when we get this question because it highlights that sometimes there's a difference between things that make the news and are really flashy and things that are really effective.
Now, and also with cloning, sorry, I'm going to pipe in one more time.
Oh.
You're basically creating a species with the exact same DNA again. And
Yes.
if we look at the climate and the world that we live in right now, it's constantly changing. So maybe cloning isn't the best way to preserve these species, but having genetic diversity and changing the DNA of these species over time will better adapt them to the ecosystem that changes constantly for them.
I love this. Thank you for highlighting that. Brett, I want to know, we're going to take one more question. We've got like 30 in the chat, but I want to highlight all our classes. Padlet, I put this link in the chat. I'm going to share with all our registered classes. If you want to inundate poor Brett with a bazillion questions when he's done this broadcast, you'll be able to share them in the virtual whiteboard there. We'll leave that up for 2 days, and then hopefully we'll get you as many answers as we possibly can in that time. So I'll leave that up. I'll make sure everyone gets it in the link at the end before we lead into our final question here, which is great and sort of touches upon this conservation action of classes. Miss Forsyth's class, they're joining us in Bracebridge and Muskoka, one of the more beautiful places in Canada. They want to know, can you help these butterflies with milkweed, anything else? Like we all think a lot of our classes know monarchs plant milkweed. With the half-moon hairstreak, is there anything that they can do? How do we help this endangered species?
So the best way for the half-moon hairstreak, because it is so isolated in our area, like the population in BC that I was chatting about, they're doing pretty okay. But here in Waterton, they're not. So if you're ever in Waterton, the best thing that you can do to help these species is to stay on the trails. So when you're hiking around, and this is a good practice really anywhere that you go, is stay on trails and make sure you clean all your equipment before you're out hiking. So clean your boots off, clean your backpack off, clean your clothes, because seeds from invasive species can latch onto you and you can bring them all over the place without even knowing it. So staying on trail and cleaning your gear will really help the plants that the half moon hair streak like to live on.
Brett, that's a fantastic answer and a great way to wrap up our broadcast. We just had one of our classes. Every single student waved as they had to walk out of the room and end their day. So I know it's getting near the end of class for everyone. I will note we've got our Peak Discovery series. Check out all our broadcasts there. This is on YouTube if you want to check it out. And if you've got more questions, please do join the Padlet, share it there. Really, really easy. We'll get you those answers as soon as we can. Brett, we do to wrap up every broadcast. I'm going to bring in our remaining classes to say thank you and farewell. Our GEM Chicago crew, Ms. Coffin, Liz LeBlanc, grade 4-7 Virgins class. Even if you're out of class, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now, everyone, and we'll see you all soon.